Let's now welcome in our guest for today. Excited to have joining us from down in Tennessee, where apparently they got way more snow than we
Oh
did.
my God.
Ben Wright of Broadway Sports Media, also a writer with the MLS. Nice to have you here, Ben. How are you?
I've been
Hey, thanks for having me on. Yeah, we are currently kind of snowed in here. It's not that much snow, but I don't think Tennessee's ever prepared for snow. So 6 inches kind of just shuts everything down.
Honestly, I was surprised. I didn't think you guys got snow like that down there either, Ben. I was really surprised. I saw you actually posting stuff of, I guess, you and your family and just showing your neighborhood covered. So some fun snow days that are happening down there. I guess we can't complain about our 3 inches or so that we got up here in Philly.
Yeah, I think I saw somewhere that we got our average annual snowfall in about 24 hours, and we have more coming down right now. So we'll see. I might be here for a few weeks.
Climate change and global warming, Ben. Climate change and global warming. All right. I'm sure you get all the soccer insight and all the latest on what's happening. And I think you are the right person. I'm sure you get that joke a lot to join us to
I see
talk
what you did
about
there.
Mr. Wright, to talk about some possible names out there that are looking to come to the MLS. Now, I was surprised by some of these. I've been hearing different reports. Tom Bogart, different people that have been sharing names that have been reportedly linked to the MLS. I was excited to hear some, starting with like Olivier Giroud, 37 years old, but still Olivier Giroud. Divock Origi, different names. What are some names that have jumped out at you that have been linked to the MLS that you think are actually possibly going to happen, though?
I mean, I feel like Giroud has been linked forever, and he would make a lot of sense. I mean, he's 37, but he's still playing consistently for the French national team. He's still scoring goals for AC Milan. I think he's one of those. I mean, I think in general, players are going to start playing longer as kind of the science and sports medicine gets better. But I also think just the way he plays, kind of, he's not Zlatan Ibrahimovic, but it kind of reminds me of that type of player who can keep playing even as he gets older. He's adapted his game really well. I think he'd be a great fit. He'd be someone that Nashville fans have talked about for a long time. Obviously, they don't have a DP spot, and he'd require one. But I think he'd be super fun to see in MLS. I could definitely see a team taking a swing on him.
Hey Ben, this is JP over here. I wanted to talk a little bit. Obviously, we've heard the reports of all these players in the Saudi league that won out now. Jordan Henderson was one of those pieces that fell now, as he's now with Ajax. You think we can get any of these players over in MLS, and what team do you think that would be?
I mean, I think yeah, it might take some restructuring of the roster rules. I think a lot of people were kind of looking at that when those reports of potentially adding a fourth DP spot were kind of circulating a few weeks ago, and then obviously at the Board of Governors meeting that didn't happen. But I mean, hey, with 2026 coming up with the World Cup here, I think there is going to be a push for more of those kind of big name marketable stars. There's I think it's also kind of a testament to MLS, and maybe while some fans are frustrated with the more kind of risk averse approach that they've taken, it kind of pays off in times like this where you see the Saudi Arabian League take huge swings, spend a ton of money on these players, and then it kind of falls apart within a few months. And MLS has held off on that. They've been way more sustainable. And I think they're in a better position now. There were a lot of people talking about, okay, is Saudi a threat to MLS long term? And I think even a few months after that kind of was a conversation, you're kind of seeing that MLS is probably going to be around or more relevant for longer.
Yeah, it definitely, as you mentioned, feels like there's right now such a huge change between all the obviously international competitions coming up, World Cup, the Olympics. More eyes are on the MLS. There's more excitement around it. There are more names, more players. Of course, Messi helped with that tremendously as well. So, as you talk about just some of the potential options for the future, are there any other players that you've really been seeing consistently linked to the MLS?
I mean, I think Neymar's the big one. Everybody talks about getting him to MLS. And you know what? I mean, it might happen eventually. I think I forget who it was. Maybe Fab Romano put out a report that he's not going to be one of the players who is let out of his contract in Saudi Arabia early. But I mean, he's linked all the time to MLS, and I don't think he's obviously not going to have the same type of impact as Messi, but it would be close. I mean, he's a huge name. I think he's been kind of unfairly maligned throughout his career, but I would put him as one of the best players, definitely of this generation. And he still has huge kind of marketing pull. And he's a great player still. I would love to see him in MLS. Probably not this year, but within the next couple years for sure.
That would be awesome.
Yeah. Let's stay on that topic there, Ben. So, like, look, obviously, Nashville and Philadelphia, we're not New York or Miami, right? And but some of us smaller markets still want these big name players. So, like, how does the MLS kind of like divvy this up? Like, how do we convince some of these players to look at a Nashville, look at a Philadelphia? How do we make it more even in the playing field here?
I mean, I think there is a reality where when people think of the U.S., they want to live in Miami, New York, L.A., Chicago, and so I think those four kind of have the name recognition off the bat that kind of gives them a leg up. But I mean, it was just a couple months ago that we saw like credible reports saying that Kansas City was close to signing Ronaldo. Obviously, that didn't pan out, but I mean, I think there is still potential for teams to do that. They might have to get creative with kind of the incentives they offer, and maybe even like giving up some kind of ownership assets and stuff like that. But I mean, I think America in general just has a lot of appeal for players to come over here. Definitely, I think still towards the end of their careers for the most part with these bigger name players, but it still has a ton of appeal. And I think I hope at least as kind of the spotlight is on the U.S. In for the soccer world, I think we're going to see maybe more of these players playing at teams that you wouldn't necessarily expect.
Yeah, I know our producer Tyler. I'm gonna put you on blast. He's like money, 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 money. It definitely comes down to money too. But look, there's other things that are appealing. You can go down to Nashville, where you guys just already hit your annual record of snow. You can go to Philly, where we don't put down rock salt, and our snow causes the roads and sidewalks to feel like ice skating rinks. We've got other cool things to worry about. But look, overall, so far this off season, which is like a month and a half, it feels like it flies by. What have been your thoughts? Because Nashville, much like the Union, have been quieter. Small signings here and there, little moves here and there that have been happening. Obviously, you guys have had a little bit more chatter. What have been your overall thoughts so far in terms of the MLS, though, as to how this offseason's been going?
I think Miami has the best roster ever put together in MLS history, at least on paper. Because everybody talks about the big four with Busquets and Alba and Messi and Suarez, but they're super deep outside of that. I mean, Campagna is going to be playing a backup role, and I would put him as one of the best 10 number nines in the league. They're really deep at every position. I think they probably should be the favorites for pretty much every trophy this season. I don't think they'll win all four or five, I guess, however you count it. But they should be the favorites. But yeah, I mean, Columbus is still really, really good. They obviously we saw what they did last year. I like how they operate, and they add kind of maybe under the radar pieces, but they know that their coaching staff and especially Wilfred Nancy can really develop players quickly. So I think they're still going to challenge. Cincinnati looks really good, and then I've been really impressed with Seattle and Colorado and some of the moves that they make. I think the East is still pretty far ahead of the West, but I think the West is going to be pretty wide open, and I think anybody could win it.
All right, well, let's stay with that. We actually asked this question on Tuesday here. The Eastern Conference, look, we talked about Miami, we talked about Columbus, we can even talk about Philly, but do you have a dark horse that no one is talking about that could potentially sneak up on the East this year?
I would go with New England. I know they
Okay.
kind of had the last year. Obviously, they had tons of issues, especially with Bruce Arena and that whole controversy. But their roster is really, really good. Um, I'm not necessarily sold on Caleb Porter as the best overall coach, but I think he's good at getting a team to a trophy quickly. It might not go well after that, but I think if you're looking for a win now team, Caleb Porter's not a bad option, and they're kind of in win now mode. I mean, their core is in their prime or getting just past their prime. I think Carlos Hill is still one of the best playmakers in the league, but he's getting close to 30. I think he actually may be over 30. So he's not going to be around for a ton longer. And so you kind of, if you're going to win something, you want to do it now. But I really like the core of their roster. I think they're as deep as it gets at center back. They have some really good pieces out wide, and if they can just find a semi-reliable number nine, maybe even turn Giacomo Veroni into a semi-reliable number nine, I think they'll be one of the better teams in the league.
Okay, so some interesting takes. And I agree with your thoughts on Miami's roster. It's insane to even think about what they're going to look like. I know one of our viewers is asking about Miami having too many friendly games. I do think, to your point about Miami on paper being the front runner to win every possible piece of hardware might be offset by the fact that there's just so many games, injuries, other things that could come into play there. But on the other side, as you talk about New England, definitely a consistent name that we've heard as a dark horse as well. And I tend to agree with you. Now, I want to shift over as we were talking about some of the other soccer topics and news because U.S. Soccer did just release the list of some awards that came out. Tuesday, we mentioned Christian Pulisic because he also is one that's was quoted saying how he would like to, at some point in his career, end up in the MLS. And of course, everybody gets excited, us included, at the thought of Christian Pulisic in the MLS. Just voted the 2023 U.S. Soccer Male Player of the Year. With that, just, measly 4 times. It's, casual. And then also Kevin Paredes voted as the U.S. Soccer Young Male Player of the Year. What are your initial thoughts on these two awards that were given out to Kevin and Christian? And did you feel like there was someone else that maybe was more deserving? I felt like both, to me, were good fits. But I've been seeing various reports of some other thoughts as to who should have been named Young Player of the Year or just Male Player of the Year.
I don't know what the age cutoff for the Young Player of the Year is. So off the bat, take this with a grain of salt. I think Ricardo Pepi, if he still qualifies, he would be one that I think has probably a stronger case than Paredes. I mean, as far as Pulisic though, I mean, the dude's been in ridiculous form since he went to AC Milan. I think he's kind of throwing back to the early 2 seasons at Chelsea when he was their consistent best player. I mean, he just won Serie A Player of the Month. He looks like he's finding the form that we've all kind of been waiting for him to hit consistently. And I mean, he's 25 and already has 4 U.S. Male Soccer Player of the Year awards. I think he has a strong argument to be the most talented player the U.S. has ever produced. I know you can get into the greatest player of all time discussion, and I still think overall probably Landon Donovan's career has the edge on him. But I mean, he's gonna break that here soon. He's 25. He hasn't even hit his prime, and I think we're kind of seeing levels from him that we haven't seen from any U.S. player before.
Ben,
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you because there's been a player linked to the MLS that really intrigues me here, and that's Jesse Lingard here. It's been a player
Mm.
that, listen, I don't know what to make of the past couple years, but obviously we've seen him at the height of his career, and it's pretty good, and that'd be really fun here in the MLS. And he's been linked to Portland, which is very interesting because we know Portland's been a golden standard over the past 10 years here in the MLS. So just kind of your thoughts. Like, you think Jesse would fit well in this league? Could we see old Linz back?
I mean, I would have thought that DC United would have gone for him when Rooney was the coach. And I guess since that's not an option now, Phil Neville makes a lot of sense with the Manchester United connection. I'm interested. He hasn't played consistently in a while, and he is such a streaky player. I mean, at his best, he was one of the better players for United years ago, and then kind of fell off a cliff. We've seen him kind of have these mini resurgences and then kind of disappear for a while. So he'd be a big swing for an MLS team to take. I don't know if it would pay off, but I'd be interested to see kind of what his deal looks like. If you can get him on a max TAM deal and maybe not have to spend DP money on him, I think it would be absolutely a risk worth taking. But I don't know if that's even possible. I think he'd probably be on a DP deal.